So my real pile of shame sits here on these shelves and in the lower cupboard area of this dresser. And so although I'm really happy with the amount of terrain I'm building and the way that's developed, my mini painting is really not keeping up with the terrain and the games on which in which to use those minis. And so it's probably, I think, high time that I fixed that. So I want to try and start making my way through this pile of minis, most of which date back to the 80s and the 90s, which is when I was buying minis on, on a bigger scale than what I have done over the last 10 or 15 years. So I'm not the fastest mini painter by any stretch, and I'm certainly not the best mini painter by a long way. I have a set of skills which I'm happy to share, but I also want to build my skill level with painting minis. And so these occasional episodes with me bringing out a mini painting release is a documentation of me and how I'm progressing and imparting what little bit of knowledge I have with regard to painting. A lot of my knowledge, of course, comes from my actual illustrative painting that I apply into my minis paintings. So this is the old Games Workshop Dark Elf Blackguard that I am currently painting, and here we go. This is it. Let's do this. Well, there we go. One cleaned up 1999 edition of a Dark Elf Blackguard from Old Hammer. And yeah, so I've had this miniature knocking around probably since about 1999, and probably was bought for a character back in the day then in some D&D game I was running. But right now, it actually is going to be a drow, and in particular Belak from Sunless Citadel. Now, I know Belak was not a drow in the original setting, in the original module, but that's how it turned out in our little campaign. And in particular, it was going to give me a little opportunity to play around with the Arachnomancer from Tomb of Foes, I think. Anyway, the cleaning process there was 100% acetone, nail varnish remover, and a toothbrush. Took 10 minutes or so to clean it all up from 20-30-year-old paint. I do need to just dig into some of the deeper grooves here with a scalpel or any kind of nicely pointed blade utility knife, and just get out the last little remnants of old paint before giving it an undercoat. I do have to apologise for the intense sunshine that was streaming across all some parts of this. What can you do? It's the UK and it was sunny, blimey. Anyway, I think I'd actually run out of spray primer, which is why I'm actually priming the figure with the airbrush, with some new Vallejo paints undercoats that I'd bought as well, so it was an opportunity to test those out. I have to say, Vallejo paints seem to have a bit of a glossy finish that I'm not 100% keen on, but we'll see anyway. And then the next step was to just airbrush a Zenithal Highlight. I'm sure you all know what that is, but just basically airbrushed a very light white, just off-white, light grey, from a overhead position so that it sort of brings out the detailing, it pops out that detailing. And then here we go, you can see the final effect, how it really makes the deeper shadows more resonant, and that adds to the drama. Over amplified, I guess, with that sunshine.
Okay, so I want to give him some. I want to take this piece off and give him a staff of some description that has a slightly alien look to it, though dangerous. I think this bit is too big. Thinking about chopping this here, so it's this bit, so it's this bit at the end here, but I think it's a bit too chunky, I think. So I think I'm going to take that part. This, I believe, may well have been out of something like Space Hulk, something like that maybe, years ago. I've got a feeling the minis out of that were these garish colours and in this softer plastic. Right, that's it. Let's get rid of that bit. Okay, this is the pinch moment now, because I've got to be absolutely certain I want to do this. Oh, it's done now. So that's a better scale. That's it. And let's try that. That's better. Just smooth these bits out.
And yeah, there we go, all cleaned up and super glued on there. And I think that gives me the sort of look I'm after. I want a techno look to it. I'm not sure why, it just feels right. So I failed to film this bit, but I knew that the staff needed just a little bit more flair. He's, after all, a drow and a arachnomancer. So that bit of ribbon there, that is actually fashioned from a very thin sliver of aluminium can, drinking can, and just twisted into a aesthetically pleasing shape. So yeah, there we go. That is how that came about, and I think it adds just that little bit of a flourish to the staff as well. So I says I'm using predominantly Vallejo paints here from the game colour set, and this is the blood red, just thinned down a little so that I've got a little bit of flow to it, and just start working on the frills here in the drow's undercoat. Now, I knew I wanted this undercoat to sort of vignette subtly through a couple of colours, so I actually added a little bilious pink, that's an old Games Workshop, to that red, to get this pinkish colour, and then just painted back up into the wet red paint so that I get a nice soft blend. It's a little easier here because there's a series of overlapping plates to this kind of piece, this garment he's wearing here, so you can sort of get away with a little bit rougher blend. And then I figured, just to make him completely outrageous, I would also really sort of pop out his shoulder pads there. I mean, they're big enough. Why shouldn't they be a vibrant red to match? I do find when you're painting just a little bit of detail like this, it's good to have the brush fully loaded with paint and then try to push the point of the brush into the raised area, and I find that that'll give you a nice clean edge to sort of push up against. Okay, to play off against some of all those really hot colours, I want to cool down the next bit. So, but I still want to stay in harmony. So I'm using the Game Colour Ultramarine and mixing that red in with it. And this colour is going to be the base for the overcoat that he's wearing. Well, I've got another old Games Workshop colour going on here, and that's Beaten Copper. I mean, some of these colours probably still available. I don't know. It's been a very long time since I bought any Games Workshop paints. So anyway, I wanted to have the metallic parts of his armour still have a kind of luxury element to them. So I didn't want to go with a standard kind of steel look. So yeah, copper seemed to be the right idea. So just base coating all of the metals that I want. You will also notice that I wet blended the ribbon there in the background using the red into the purple that I've just painted on the overcoat. Just using the same process. Make sure the two paints are wet, and they'll blend together quite nicely where they meet. I did decide I wanted to just change up the metals a little bit. I thought it'd be quite interesting to have different metals. So I did go with the classic dry brush of chainmail over black undercoat on the chainmail. Now you will notice I have done underpaint for the skin tones there, which was filmed fantastically out of focus. So anyway, it was basically that purple with a little bit of black in it. I didn't want a black skin, but it is a very, very dark skin. And again, that same purple has had a little white mixed into it, so that I've got this lovely dusky lilac colour to base coat the hair with. So just going in and with a slightly thinned down paint so that it runs into the recesses quite well, and just finish out that lovely hair. I use that same colour to just go in with a very fine detail brush and just put some sort of magic sigils and marks along this ribbon to indicate the fact that it has a magical nature. And then the last and final bit of base coat was the all the sort of the leather that he's got around his waist, belt, little packs and pouches, and I used a snake bite leather, I think, but I added a little of that red into it because the leather colour in the paint pot wasn't exactly what I wanted. I wanted something a little bit warmer, and so there we are. That just finishes off the base coats. It's always the terrifying part, popping that little bit of paint into the eye there, and I wanted these eyes to have a red colour to them. Sorry, it's slightly out of focus. Miniatures are so difficult to film. So if anybody has any hints or tips on how to film miniatures a bit closer, then please pop it down in the comments below. I think you definitely need a different set of lenses for this, but you get the idea, hopefully. Okay. It's time now to get into some glazes. I'd like to get those on at this stage now. And you can see here I'm using that dark blue and an old imperial purple just to start getting that that richness of colour now onto most of the areas that are cool in their temperature. If you look at the overall breakdown of colour that's been used in this miniature, we have these blues and pinks, so the cooler colours, and then we have the reds and browns and coppers, which are the warmer colours. So all I want to do is just take a mix of those two colours. I add a small amount of the imperial purple to the blue just to warm it ever so slightly, and then keep that mix nicely thinned down with water, and just apply that over all of those areas. So the second glaze there is a little of that blood red that I used originally with a touch of the ultramarine blue in that'll just make it go that little bit darker. And again, plenty of water. If you find that you need to, use the well, the dish soap as it's called. I have a acrylic flow improver that I will add occasionally if I need a slightly better flow, but if you get the consistency right, you shouldn't have too much of a problem with the glazes running into the recesses there and picking out the details. So this warmer glaze is good for all of the red undergarments and all of the copper areas, the shoulder pads. It'll really sort of tile those together and give them a little bit more maturity in their age. I also knew I was going to be putting some cool highlights in the skin tones there, so I wanted to drop some of this warmer glaze down into the shadow areas there, so that would contrast nicely against those highlights I put on later. And then, of course, finally we reach that detailing and edging stage. This is where your fingers always seem to start to shake just a little as you want to get the finest lines and catch the finest edges. But anyway, so this is a little of that imperial purple with a touch of white. I'm just breaking up some of the copper areas and unifying those a little with the undergarments there. Going in and just deepening some of the shadow areas, just to in the cloak itself, you know, the overcoat. So yeah, just working the paint down into the deepest sort of recesses to strengthen the contrast there. And of course, just to put a bit of a cast shadow where any garment overlays another garment as well. Whenever I have a cloak or a coat or something with a bit of an open expanse on it, I do tend to put a pattern in it. My go-to has historically always been some kind of curlicue like I'm doing here, as it tends to be magic related characters that tend to have these kind of garments, and so this kind of patterning tends to suit that kind of character type. Once I have done that, I will go over generally and add another glaze. This, I feel, will often help to just leave any patterning a bit more subtle. It just pushes them back into the garment that it's on. And I'm just using the same glaze as I used before here. It will just help to richen that colour even more. Any number of glazes will always go on to do that. And then I actually lightened that glaze with a little bit of the Imperial Purple to create the highlight colour, which I'm just painting now on the highest points of any of the cool material there, that bluer material. And likewise with the copper, I just wanted to pull back some of the brighter copper colour. So this is just that neat beaten copper from that old pot of mine. And that's pretty much it. I mean, you're really down to individual personal aesthetic when you get to this point. You know, how do you like to define your edges? How do you like to play around with little details? And I enjoy this part. It's one of the shorter parts of the whole process, but I think it can really help to individualize a miniature to your own tastes. And we are finally onto the face, and I'm using a colour very similar to the highlight colour that I used on the cloak, although not quite as light. And I'm going in and addressing all of the sort of the mid-tones of the face with this deeper bluish colour that's a tiny bit more vibrant than the original colour I laid down there. I'm just going around and I'm trying to catch all of the upward or forward facing planes of the face, and then I go in with that colour again, very slightly tinted with a little white just to make it a touch brighter, and I hit that highlight colour on the very sort of highest, most prominent parts of the face, so the brows, the ridgeline, tip of the nose, tip of the chin. Really think about where the light is going to catch the most prominent parts of the face. Okay, so he is all finished. He's here somewhere on one of these spaces, wherever I've managed to squeeze him in, and you'll get a closer look at him at the moment. I'm really pleased. Most of what I've done in this is what I have always historically done, so it's kind of like my baseline, I guess, from where I want to now build my skill level at painting minis. But I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned a lot. If you have, please please subscribe. However you want to show your appreciation, whether that's subscriptions, whether that's patrons, whether that's clicking a like button, a thumbs up, hitting the notification bell on any of the social media, or here, of course, on YouTube, then please, it is much appreciated. And it always drives me on to looking forward to bringing more and more content to the tabletop and out to the world as well. And of course, if you haven't checked it out already, head on over to my page on Drive-Thru RPG. You can look for lava terrain tiles. Those have gone down quite well. I'm happy they're working. Any feedback, if you do get some, much appreciate that as well. That's me. I am signing off. I will be with you next Thursday, of course, with hopefully the first of my next big build release. So we look forward to that. Take care, guys. Bye for now. Bye.